Okay, so today on Career Candour, we have a truly fascinating guest, someone whose career journey is as inspiring as it is diverse. From starting out as a software engineer to climbing the corporate ladder to a C-level role in a global insurance company, he has seen and shaped leadership at the highest levels. But rather than staying in the corporate world, he made a bold move, transitioning into the world of coaching, leadership development, and transformation. Joerg Sauer is now a transformational coach, facilitator, and the country leader for Morphosis Coaching in Indonesia. He works with leaders and organizations to unlock potential, break down barriers, and build stronger, more connected teams. Through his work, he helps leaders reinvent themselves, not just to be more effective at work, but to maximize their impact in all areas of life. He's also an international speaker, an ICF credential coach, and a mentor for aspiring coaches looking to build a successful coaching business. Jurg believes that leadership isn't just about titles, it's about mindset, impact, and creating environments where people thrive. Today, we're going to dig into his incredible career journey, his insights on leadership, and what it really takes to transform not just organizations, but ourselves. So without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Joerg Sauer.
Hey, thanks for inviting.
I just want to make sure I've got your name right there. It's probably a bit late to ask, but for those listening, what's the correct pronunciation of your name?
The German version would be Jörg, but everything goes as long as it is not jerk. No, I'm
Understood.
so it's Jörg, George, something like that.
Understood. Well, look, I'm really excited to kick off the conversation today. The idea is that we're going to look at both your career as well as some of your passions, your interests, and your evolution from your time in insurance to what you're doing at the moment in building the leadership coaching business at Morphosis Consulting. So just to kick off things, what I'd like to ask is, based on a diverse career spanning software engineering to C-level leadership in a global insurance company, what were the key moments or turning points that have really shaped your journey?
Most of the turning points were just by chance. My career has never been a career of design. I was a software engineer freelance, so basically straight after in high school, in university, I embarked on that. Then my ex-wife got a job in Indonesia because she wanted to work where she is, live where she is a textile engineer. And because I was IT, I said, okay, let's move to Indonesia. So that one was kind of a career change in a sense that it opened my perspective to multicultural environments and the Asian culture or Southeast Asian culture and then I realized that I need to rebuild my toolbox, not my technical toolbox, but my, leadership, communication. What works here is different than what works in Germany, for example, or in Europe when you are working with teams. So I had to rebuild that. That was definitely a change. And then when we moved back to Germany, I realized that, the romanticizing, everything in your home country is better than where you went, right? So that was also kind of liberating and revealing because I realized that, banana republic is everywhere. It's just different bananas. So basically, meaning the level of frustration you have in yourself, the level of happiness, the level of commitment and whatever, that's kind of constant. It's just maybe slightly different nuances and things. So that was also shaping. And then when I moved back to Indonesia 3 years later, by coincidence again, similar situation, she got the job, I just followed. That's when I happened to enter the insurance industry. It was basically the first time I ended up in a corporate job. And based on my previous experience as a freelance software engineer and consultant, I always was aware that, working with people is the most important aspect if you want to be successful. And in my leadership role, I started with a small team of 37. And when I left my first role as engineer, or not at least as head of engineering, I ended up with a team of around 200. But the overall organization had been restructured, so it was about 400 people working on projects. And of course, you need to do different things in order to be successful. It's not about the technical skills. It's more about the people skills or the soft skills, so to
Mm.
say. And yeah, that was revealing. And then when I changed my job into the CIO role, of course, it's even more about people, about the organization, about the collaboration among the different departments. It's about handling stakeholders at a different level, navigating politics. So communication skills, different requirements here. So I think that has been all very influential and important for my career.
You've been very successful in insurance. What was it that inspired you to transition from corporate leadership to transformational consulting?
So during the pandemic, I realized that I was flying blind. So I was kind of aware that before that I'm an observation leader. So who is working together, who is talking to whom, what is on the screen, what is on the walls, and then basically leading from there. When we all went into home office during the pandemic, I realized I'm flying blind. And despite my past experience in being a trainer, being a facilitator, being a mentor, I still didn't get the information I needed in order to navigate the different situation. And then I realized that I needed to improve my questioning skills. So I had kind of coaching practices in my toolbox before, powerful questions, active listening, and so forth. But it wasn't necessarily to the level where I could get the information in order to lead, and also to be influential in different ways than before. The other aspect was that because everybody was working from home and you are rather isolated, I realized that there was also a psychological impact. So I was coached during the time. Since I was in my C-level role, I always had a coach. More like a sounding board, not on a particular topic. And I realized that that helped me to navigate the psychological challenges everybody was experiencing, including myself. And then when I thought, why don't I embark on a coaching journey, right? So basically sign up for a coach education, see what it does to me, and start coaching parallel to my CIO role as an internal coach, external coach in the organization predominantly. And then I realized that every single time I went into a coaching session, I entered with a certain level of energy and motivation or mood. And every time I ended the coaching session, the energy level was a higher one and my mood was a more excited and positive one. The more I did that, I realized for myself, why do I want to deal with the other things which are maybe not so pleasant in my life?
Mm.
Mm. And also, why don't I focus 100% on developing people? Because throughout my career, started back in high school, giving computer classes during university, and then also my freelance career, doing trainings on technical skills. Later in my corporate job, agile transformation, leadership development, so forth. So I've always enjoyed working with people and developing them. And I thought, why shouldn't I focus on something which makes an impact 100%?
Mm.
Because for me, there is so much suffering, so to say, and so much struggle, and I find it's unnecessary. So I want to make a difference, and that's why I decided 2 years back that I will step out of my corporate job. So I was basically 1 year phase out, and now since the beginning of last year, I'm working as a full-time coach.
And what's really intriguing is that you've got a wealth of international experience, especially working in Indonesia. How has that influenced your leadership and coaching philosophy?
So as I said, right, so I realized pretty quickly when I landed in Indonesia the first time that you need to have a different approach in order to get things done. And it's not about the technical skills. Yes, sometimes maybe there's a different levels, but it was always about the intrinsic motivation of people, how to communicate, how to inspire, and also how to a certain extent influence. This works. So the core motivation is different. So it's different priorities. Everybody has different priorities, different motivations. But what I realized when I moved to Indonesia, that the intrinsic motivation, so let's say you define yourself by your job. That's not necessarily the case, or it was at least what my interpretation was at the beginning, is not necessarily what it is in Indonesia, right? And then I realized, okay, so how do I incentivize learning? How do I incentivize collaboration? How do I convince people that this is the right way to do or not? And at the beginning, when I was here, I didn't have a high position, so the seniority principle also kind of applied. So because I was in my mid-30s and not so senior, so I realized that I need to do things differently. And now I have a slightly different perspective into that. Fundamentally, I believe that we are all humans, so we have way more in common that one differentiates us. And for example, in Germany, right? So we are rather outspoken and direct. And here in Asia or in Southeast Asia, that's being considered maybe too direct. So it kind of triggers a conflict. And of course, here the culture is always more like, okay, we want to avoid conflict. So we are not open to conflict. Yet when it comes to humans, once we experience a conflict, it's the same kind of responses. So what triggers us might be different. Yeah. So in German, for European, maybe the conflict starts here. And for Southeast Asian, the conflict starts here. Yet once we experience a conflict, the responses, the anxiety, whatever the emotions which come are pretty much similar. So from a leadership and coaching perspective, I need to understand the human. I need to take the human into account, and I must not judge, or you are being triggered here and you are being triggered there. So because there is no right and wrong, so we need to understand that maybe there is a different level, and it's the other way around as well, right? So what's maybe very relaxed here is pretty much stressful in Europe. So it's not, one way here and another way there. It's different things which are being interpreted and being seen from a different reality perspective with different cultural backgrounds. So when I'm working as a leader or when I'm working as a coach, I need to take the human into account. I need to understand, so what triggers that person? Why is that? What is the past conditioning? What are the intrinsic motivations? How can I incentivize? What kind of feedback do I need to provide and how? And once I do that, I have different conversations and then I also have different outcomes and different results. And that's true for a leader and it's also true for a coach.
I think that's really interesting. So you talk about some of the roadblocks that prevent people from realizing their full potential there. And then you also talk about some of the leadership struggles that we see today. Um, I'm curious though, how do you approach coaching leaders who are resistant to change?
There's 2 points into that. So when you say, how do I approach leaders who are resistant to change? So we need to have to distinguish 2 cases. If the leader comes to me and looks for a coach, there is an intrinsic motivation, there is a realization that something is off or something needs to be addressed, whatever, right? Or in order to achieve something. So in that context, I rarely experience that. Where I experience it more often is when, the company, the organization provides a coach. And at the beginning, that was something which was difficult for me because you need to establish that understanding, what is coaching and why do you have a coach? So now it's pretty easy. The first question is, why are you here? And based on the response on why the person is here, you can see if there is a perception that maybe something is broken, right? So I'm getting a coach because I need to be fixed. Or I need to get a coach because I cannot get my job done. And this thing we need to get out of the window pretty quickly because it's a misconception. So coaching is a partnership to help somebody to develop and to help somebody to achieve something, to help somebody to overcome maybe some difficulties or challenges. And it's not about the corporate goals or agenda. It's all about the individual. And so for me, at least my perspective into coaching is, if there is organizational goals, the outcomes out of the coaching in relationship with the organizational goals are more or less side effects. because what we are working is with the individual, and only the individual can change. So when the individual realizes, okay, I can change myself, and by changing myself, the situations, the circumstances, the interactions, the outcomes change, then there is immediately a strong motivation to move on, because you have these positive experiences. And that's why coaching always is a program which runs over 6 to 8 months in my case, right? So we always work to 6 to 8 months, because it needs time for change. It also needs to time to get these different experiences. Sometimes you make big steps, often you make only tiny steps, so it takes time to realize what is changed. But in every single coaching relationship, you have these big aha moments where, something flips, and then it becomes really obvious for the person, for the coachee or the client himself, what has changed and how coaching makes a difference, but also for the surroundings. So basically the people around, they will observe changes. And they are quite obvious. And that's maybe also maybe one thing which many people don't necessarily understand. How do we measure the success of coaching? It's not hard KPIs. It's more like subjectives or like observations, but it can always be observed that there's changes.
Yeah. Are there any success stories that you can share? I mean, don't need no names or organizations, but any success stories where coaching has transformed a leader or an organization?
So I would say every single coaching relationship I have is a success story. And it's not me to decide that. It's the client who decides if the coaching was successful. And sometimes, not necessarily in corporate coaching, but if I do individual coaching, I'm happy to, and then people say, oh, your fees are rather high, I might not be able to afford that. I'm saying, you know what, we do the coaching, you pay me at the end. And if you're not happy, you don't have to pay me. So far, everybody has paid me. No, because it really works. So success story is maybe one quote somebody said, before the coaching, I was feeling like a robot. Now I feel like a human. So there was a fellow client who just posted a LinkedIn article, and so in our coaching relationship, we had that kind of analogy of jumping. So she jumped several times during the coaching, actually almost after every session, she jumped and did something which was way out of her comfort zone. And now she has made a significant career change, which is contributing big for her professional life, but she is also realizing quite significant changes in her personal life. So it's not just one area. Normally, coaching, at least the coaching I am doing, is not limited to the professional side or the personal side, because it's all interconnected. So we are going more like a holistic, integral approach into the coaching. And that's why I'm calling it transformational coaching, because at the end of the coaching, you are different than at the beginning. It's not tactical.
Understood. And we see many industries moving towards things like AI and automation. I mean, how do you see the future of coaching evolving in this new landscape?
So AI is a tool, and I'm using AI almost every day. It would be stupid if not, because it helps a lot. When we look into AI, I also advise my clients to use AI to brainstorm, get different ideas, right? So, for example, in the corporate context, is often, but not just limited corporate, right? Corporate context is about speaking up, about communication with your team, with your peers, with your higher ups. And we all have a certain communication style, and in some situations it doesn't work. And generative AI tools are great in, giving you an assessment. Okay, this is the email I wrote, or this is the statement I want to make. Give me your thoughts. And then you get the information. Okay, you can rewrite it. And so how to rewrite it to make it more direct, or more friendly, or less intrusive, or offending, things like this. So you can learn from that. And when I'm coaching, I'm advising this tool, or I'm suggesting, explore if AI can help you if you have, for example, have communication issues. It's also about strategies, right? So meaning how to set up a meeting with a team, how to have this difficult conversation with your higher up, how to have that promotion conversation or salary increase conversation with your higher up. And ChatGPT and the other generative AIs, they can definitely help. And there is tools out there which coaches are using in order to support and complement their coaching practice. When it comes to coaching, however, we need to understand that coaching is not just cognitive. So it's not about what the person says or what the person is not saying. It's about it's about the body language. It's about the energy shifts. It's about, yeah, it's kind of a holistic thing. So giving an example, right? So when we are talking about certain situations, people are reliving that. And even if they think they are over the situation and they can handle it, and when they're explaining it, often it kind of discomfort or the negativity or the anxiety is replicated in the body language. So while the person is talking about it, the breathing frequency goes up or down, the body posture changes dramatically. And as a coach, we play that back. So as long as the AI doesn't integrate image processing and other aspects, there is definitely something missing. And you don't necessarily need to have visual clues when you do coaching, because you can also coach over the phone without any video, but you then pick up things from, slight resistance, from the tonal things, still breathing patterns. So you can listen into that. So basically, as a coach, I'm not just on the cognitive level, I'm on the holistic level. And sometimes you notice things immediately because they are obvious. Sometimes they are very subtle, so you realize them over the coaching relationship. Let's say after 2-3 sessions, then suddenly there is something there. And because we keep poking questions, we also work a lot with silence. At some point, you don't even maybe need to point it out because the client realizes it by themselves or by herself.
Understood. I think that leads on quite well to the next topic, which is about entrepreneurship and the business of coaching. So you're the country leader for Morphosis Consulting in Indonesia. What has been your experience building a coaching ecosystem here?
So first, correct, it's not consultancy, it's Morphosis Coaching, because we do coaching, not consultancy. And it's a global organization in Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pacific, which is predominantly focused on coach education. So we do coach education, but also entrepreneurial education. The challenges in Indonesia, for example, but not limited to it here, is that the understanding what is coaching is not necessarily well established. So what we do as a coaching organization, but what also the coach community does, and what the International Coaching Federation and the Jakarta Charter chapter is doing, we are educating about what is coaching and what it is not. Because it's not, because people, when they are appointed a coach in the corporate context, or when I have conversations about coaching, they are looking for advice. So it's either consultancy, right? So the consultant comes, analyzes, and gives you the advice, do this. Or a mentor comes based on their experience. They can make recommendations what you need to do. Coaching is different because in coaching, you are the expert. So basically the client is the expert and finds the solutions which work for them and which help them to transform. And the coach is a tool. So the coach is just a tool to enable. So we are doing a lot of work in communicating that, explaining this, and also showcasing that. So we do free events both in the Morphosis coaching community, but also ICF Jakarta Charter chapter or ICF Global is doing free events so that people can experience coaching. And coaching is just one modality of many, right? So there is training, there is mentoring, there is all the mental health related counseling, therapy. And of course, there's also sports coaching. And that's where most people maybe think what coaching is. It's not sports coaching. It's about allowing the person or partnering with the client in a thought-provoking and creative process to maximize their personal and professional potential. Yeah, but the work is being done by the client. Coach is a
So
tool.
if you were to give advice to aspiring coaches who want to build a sustainable practice, what would it be?
So there are. So first of all, there is many ways or many ways to make a living as a coach. So there's definitely different coach personas, right? So you can be an internal coach, as I started, right, within your organization. You can be a contract coach. So basically, you're working for a organization who is doing the marketing, the customer acquisition, or a platform who provides that. You can also have a strong network background because you have been a highly reputed person in based on your back, or you wrote a book and which this becomes really successful. So based on your background, you have different avenues. And first of all, everybody who is embarking on a coaching journey needs to understand, okay, what are the avenues I want to pursue? And I just started as an internal coach. And at some point, I realized, oh, I love that so much. It's my passion. So I stepped out of my corporate role. So understand what your situation is and maybe how you can incorporate coaching into that context, or how that context can help you to embark on a coaching journey. And you don't necessarily need to become a full-time or fully professional coach, because I personally can say that coaching will change your life. So everybody will benefit from a coach education, be it in the personal context, but also in a professional, especially leadership perspective context, because you change a lot the perspectives of what is happening, right? Because it's less assumptions, it's more curiosity, it's less judgment, it's more kind of verifying and validating your assumptions and being with what is. And that itself changes a lot in the dynamics you're experiencing personally as well as a leader. So if you are a leader, I can highly recommend early on in your career to embark on a coaching education, because I can tell you, the more experience we have, the more difficult it becomes, because we need to unlearn a lot of things. So if you are in your 20s, do a coach education, easy, because you don't have to unlearn so many things. When you are in your 50s, you have to forget a lot of things when you do coaching. But so now coming back to your question. So when it's about an entrepreneurial journey, we need to understand that it's highly complex. So there's so many things you need to do. And the science behind is rather straightforward. So you grab a book, you read it, it's all kind of clear. There's no rocket science here. Yet, how to implement all of that, so how to understand who is your perfect customer, who do you want to work with, who do you not want to work with, what is your market, what kind of offerings do you need to have, what is your sales cycle, so to say, how do you do self-promotion and brand building, and it goes on and on and on, right? So how do you have sales conversations, how do you marketing, how do you fulfill the commitments? That's something which can be really tiring, and also maybe overwhelming. And that's why I highly recommend go into a community, entrepreneurial community. Maybe, so what I did an entrepreneurial course specifically for coaches, which was over several months, so that it's not just a short time activity and then you are left alone. It's basically you have somebody alongside who is helping you to navigate the challenges. And there's challenges and there's a lot of self-doubt. So for me, it has been reading, it has been training, and it also has been coaching and mentoring. So basically be resourceful in order to become successful.
Just to understand, so is that the Coachpreneur course that you run?
Yeah, we are doing a 6 months program we call Coachpreneur. It's originated from a highly successful coach in Canada, who also experienced that many coaches are good at coaching, but not necessarily good at building a successful coaching practice. So we are running this now for 3 years, and it's a 6 months program. It covers basically everything from taking care of yourself until pursuing mastery, and everything what you need to do in between in order to set up your coaching practice, identify your needs, your market niche, what kind of products you need to design and offerings you need to design, how to incorporate what else you have to offer, because some coaches are purely coaching, many are doing training and consultancy or coaching in parallel, right? So, but understanding that's a 6 months program we are doing.
Understood. So to move along, what I'd like to get into now is a bit more about your person behind all of this, so some personal insights and reflections. So you describe yourself as a compassionate catalyst leader. What does that mean to you?
So compassion is something which for me is very important. So basically I take the human as they are, and being not judgmental and accepting the person for who he or she is. And the older I get and the more I do coaching, I realize the more I can be that. So I can really appreciate and be compassionate with the circumstances of the person. Catalyst leader is not about me. Leadership is not about me. So it's like in the chemical reaction, right? The catalyst, right? You put it into the chemical reaction, it enables the chemical reaction to happen, but it's never being used up. So at the end, right, you have your new product, but or your new chemical or molecules, but the catalyst is still there. So so when we look at to leadership, right, there's the expert leader. It's more like I statements, right? I did that. If you are an achiever leader, then it's about we do this as a team. As a catalyst leader, it's about you. You did that. It's not about me. So, and I personally love to see things growing, people strive, organizations strive, teams strive. I love to see when there is less friction, less suffering. So as a catalyst leader, and as a coach, I offer relief.
Understood. And what personal habits or routines keep you sharp and inspired as a coach?
So of course, as a human, we all have our ups and downs, right? And I'm not immune to that. So I try to be present to the moment, and then also to my emotions and to my moods. And the more present I am to that, the faster things just pass through. For me, two things have been essential. So first of all, the understanding that the problems I face, people have faced before. So when I'm struggling, I always look for resources because I don't want to reinvent the wheel, because I think the solution is already out there. So be it in books or in podcasts or in talking with people. So that's what I do in order to be inspired and get new ideas and different things. For my personal well-being, I'm doing a lot. I'm hanging out a lot in nature. So I'm going for walks. I do frequent short breaks during the day, get some sunshine, get some, move a bit. I love endurance sports, running, hiking, cycling. So this keeps me motivated, gives me energy. And if I'm down, and I'm down, everybody is down once in a while. What helps me is conversations. So then I reach out to somebody and have a conversation. Can be a coffee chat, can be a phone call, can be right. Because once I start talking, a lot of the negative energy or the low energy immediately goes away. That works for me.
And I mean, looking back at these things that you've always known, or if you could go back now and give advice to your 30-year-old self, I mean, what would it be?
So the biggest revelation I had in the last 2 years, about 2 years back, I would say, is that I don't have to do it all by myself. And that's part of my upbringing and my early childhood experiences, right? So I've been always an autodidact. I was kind of always the loner in a sense, sorting out things for myself. And yes, I have been successful, and but it was more painful than it should have been, right? So basically, the biggest revelation for me and what I would tell my 30-year-old self is, you don't need to do it all yourself. Reach out for help, and there is no problem with that. Yeah, that's maybe the biggest thing I would let my us know.
And is there any one book or podcast or mentor that has significantly influenced your career?
I have read so many books, and I'm a bookworm, right? Because as I said, right, so I believe the solutions are out there and the inspiration is out there. So I'm reading a lot, and I'm not limiting it to one particular domain. I'm reading across. So it's difficult to pick one book or one podcast. What I find very interesting from a self-development perspective, I mentioned that one is about presence. And there's maybe two books. There's The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That's a entry-level book, so to say, to understand what is presence and how to be more present to the moment and to yourself. There is a more advanced book, which is The Unfolding Now by H.R. Almas. That's a hard one. Took me about a year to read, not because it's complicated, but it's because it's so dense, right? And the concept is clear, but then the application that sometimes takes some time. But this is a really, really inspirational book. And in order to become more conscious and more compassionate, I like the books of Ken Wilber. He's a philosopher on integral philosophy, and that helps me a lot to understand the world and see the world with different eyes and be able to be with what is and not going crazy over the news and so forth. So that's maybe 3 books I would like to recommend.
Good stuff. And look, just to wrap things up today, what I want to do is have a quick fire round, just a few questions that are quite straightforward, quite basic, and easily digestible for the audience that are listening. So I'll give you 5 or 6 questions, and I just want a short, sharp answer that can just really define these questions. So to start off, if you had to choose one word to describe your leadership style, what would that one word be?
Catalyst.
What is the biggest misconception about coaching?
Mentoring.
It can be more than one word, so I don't mind. Because it's a tough one, and I know I've had some articles out there that have shone a light on coaching and questioned the value and some other people doing it.
So I would say the misconception about coaching, if I have more than one word, is advice and mentoring, and then the other one is expensive, and it's the return of investment is questioned, and I think that's it's a biggie.
Got it. And are you a morning person or a night owl?
I'm a trained morning person, but originally I'm a night owl.
How about this? What is one thing that you wish people understood about personal growth?
Don't wait until you're ready. Start now.
And if you're looking back, it can be right now, it can be historical, but dream client, past or present, what is it? Who is it?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Can you repeat it?
So just asking about your dream client, past or present, what does a dream client look like in your eyes?
Somebody who is aware that something needs to change, who is suffering in one way or another, and has the clear intention to make a difference for his or her life.
Final question. What is next for you in your career?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, as I said before, my life is more kind of coincidental rather than planned. So I continue building my coaching practice, and so as we speak, I volunteer to become a candidate for the Jakarta Charter Chapter President-elect election in 2 weeks. So let's see how that goes. But for sure, I want to contribute to the coaching community and make an impact to change the world for a better place. So that's maybe what I want to do.
Great. Fantastic. Well, Joerg, it's been so great speaking today. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insight across your personal journey, career, coaching, and also the entrepreneurial side of this whole world and how others can perhaps accomplish it and become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, thank you very much. The pleasure is mine. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope it's inspiring for your audience.
Thanks again, Joerg. Speak soon. Thanks, Lay.
Bye bye.